Good afternoon to everybody. This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. This is our 302 that we've been playing with. And if you want to look back and review the past several videos, you could see the difference in horsepower bumps that we've been making. The first time we played with it on the dyno, we ended up with somewhere around the 290 horsepower mark, and then we made some other changes, and we're pushing around 350 now. One of the changes that we made is that we pulled what they call header vac on the engine. So the engine is pretty much sealed up since there's no breathers except for this oil fill tube, and we can use scavenging effect from the exhaust to basically pull a little bit of vacuum off the engine. So this is something that a lot of racers do. And for higher end engines, you can get into things such as vacuum pumps and even dry sump pumps that pull vacuum on the crankcase. So with that little header vac, that's probably just a few PSI of vacuum or a few inches of vacuum. I think we gained somewhere around the 5 or 6 horsepower from that change. So if we're looking forward to the end result of this engine, it's going to be pretty much as max effort as I can make it. And max effort usually involves some kind of specialized oiling system, like a dry sump or a wet dry vac system or something like that. What I have done is that I've already made up my mind to go dry sump with this engine. And it'll be easy for me to do that right off the bat. We just make a few changes to the engine, and the way that the dyno is set up at Dale Mears' shop that I use, his dyno has a provision to drive a dry sump pump off of basically the flywheel there and the drive line to hook to the engine. So he's got a pump down there. He's got a tank mounted to the dyno cart. Got all the hoses. So basically all I need is to provide an engine with an oil pan. So the changes that we will need to make to the engine, I'll need to obviously get rid of this oil pan. But we need to remove the oil pump, the pickup, the drive shaft. We need to block off the flange at the block where the oil pump goes. And I probably will get some snazzier valve covers. I would rather have 2 valve covers that are blanked off. This one it would work. This one has an oil fill tube, and it's I don't know how well it seals. Especially with this nipple and everything on it. So I'll probably be looking for a pair of valve covers that do not have breather holes and are tall so that they will allow me to run any kind of rocker arm that I want in the future. The trick to all of this has been make changes now, but don't shoot myself in the foot for changes down the road. So, we were looking at playing with some different rocker arms. Well, I hate to spend $400 on rocker arms that will only be used with a pedestal style configuration of this head. Eventually this head is going to be turned into a rocker stud and guide plate situation, or T&D or Jessel rockers that use a subplate that bolts to where the rocker studs would bolt to. So you just have to keep all this in the back of my head as I go forward, because I don't want to spend extra money or waste time. So for this episode, I'm waiting on the oil pan to be built. It should be next week before I get that. But on this episode, we're going to drain the oil, drop this pan. I'm going to go ahead and check out a couple bearings just to see how we're doing. While I have that done, I'm gonna go ahead and change the seals. So this is a dry seal. This is from Cometic, but it goes on dry, and this is for use with a vacuum pump or a dry sump pump. This is the one for the front. So this would be used in a timing cover. It's also for high vacuum setups. This is this is what your pressure side of your dry sump pump goes into. So we'll pull the filter off, and I'll go ahead and check the filter for any kind of debris while we're in there. That nipple that I put in when we were very first starting with this engine, that comes out, and then this screws in to the block so that our pressure size of our hose will screw into that. And that should be about it. So we'll go ahead and get started, get the oil drained out of this little guy, and we'll start checking the filter for issues. Oil still looks really good. So last session we put 14 pulls on this little engine, trying different things. So it still looks clean, and it's funny how your depth perception is out. I totally thought I was going to be able to touch that, but looking through the phone camera, obviously I was way off. So we're almost done dribbling here, and oil is very clean. I don't see anything alarming. There was a little bit of glitter in the oil at the bottom of the filter when I cut it open, but nothing alarming in the pleats itself. It's just really dirty. So just a lot of grit and sludge. So I would imagine it's just from where the engine is just cleaning itself up, because we were hammering on it pretty good, and modern thicker oil is a really good detergent for the inside of engines. So nothing really alarming, but I'll go ahead and probably cut the pleats off this and take a little bit closer look just in case. Alright, yeah, I'm still not seeing anything bad. It's just really dirty. So the oil temperature has really gotten up to temperature, and you know, good oil will clean the inside of an engine out. So it's just grit and dirt. So that's fine, as long as we don't have any flakes or, you know, copper flakes or aluminum flakes or anything like that. We should be in good shape. All right, so we're gonna put our Peterson dry sump adapter on here. It's got an O-ring on it that'll seal against the block there. Get that screwed in nice and tight. Got our oil pan off, and I didn't really care for that gasket, so I'm not going to use it again. But we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts away from having the pump and the pickup off of it. This is, if I remember right, this is the very first time I've had this engine upside down on an engine stand. So now we can see exactly what's going on in the bottom end of this thing. Got some water dripping out. So We're going to change our rear main seal out, which means I'm going to go ahead and take this rear main cap off. That'll give us a good idea or a good opportunity to check this bearing, and I'll also check the last rod that's in the system. As soon as I find some torque specs, that is. But I'm going to go ahead and get this rear main cap off. Oh. No bueno. Well, it's been running, so it'll continue to run. It just doesn't look good. So the test that we have coming up, probably the dry sump pump test, another cam, and then ported heads. So if we're lucky, this will hold out for us. Here's the number 8 rod bearing. This is the force bearing side. Starting to show a little bit of copper, but still usable. I'm sure the bearing clearances are getting to be a little loose. We'll get this rod torqued back up. Okay, we got our oil pump off, and when you do a dry sump application, you run a block off plate, or you can also drill and tap the feed hole under here for a pipe plug. I'm going to use one of my little block off plates that I had made up for all my dry sump stuff, and we'll get these tightened up and then move on to the next step. Pop the number 1 cap off. It looks good for 106,000 miles. So that is what we're dealing with the last part of the oil getting to this number 5 main bearing. Wish you could see this. Camera won't focus on it though. Wants to focus on my flashlight, but lots of crosshatch down there in those cylinders. Alright, we got our dry seal on here. Rear main seal, obviously it goes on dry. You don't lube them up. They conform to the crank when they get going. Who knows how it'll work with the way the crank is, but I got that pushed on there. I had to do it out of camera because it just requires a lot of manipulation. But it's on there. I can get my rear main cap on. Again, here's what we're looking at with that. I am very tempted to roll another bearing on there, but I have no way of checking the clearance. So we'll see what happens. Here's the number 4 rod bearing. I know that's the cap side, but the upper end looks just as good. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting any rod bearing failure that was piping shavings into that number 5 main bearing, but should be okay to put it back together. So I couldn't really stand it and pulled all the main caps back off so I could roll that number 5 bearing out. I really don't know what we had going on, but so here's number 4, and it's what I would consider normal bearing wear for 106,000 miles. Here's thrust bearing, looks decent. Here's number 2. Here's number 1. So something happened here. Both 4 and 8 rod bearings are fine. Looks like maybe just had some trash go through. I don't know. So in the odd chance that something isn't straight on the back. If you notice, it's wearing the back side of the bearing, and more so on the cap side, which is the side that takes all the load. In the off chance that we're just low on clearance here, I'm going to throw in some X bearings, and I don't have any plastic gauge in the shop, and to be straight up, I've never had plastic gauge in the shop because I don't really trust it. It is basically glorified dental floss, and it's nowhere near accurate enough for a professional engine builder. But in this scenario, since I don't want to take the entire crank out of the block, what I want to do is I snagged some dental floss, and I'm going to see the crank journal is fine. That's, you know, I rolled this thing over. There's nothing, I just can't figure this out. But anyway, I've ordered some plastic gauge. I'm going to check it with the X bearing, and maybe even turn it at 180 degrees and check it again, just to make sure the crank isn't somehow bent or out of round or something stupid. But what I'm hoping is that when I changed the cam, that we didn't have a cam bearing problem or something like that, where it's feeding material down into the bearing. But it flows from main bearing to cam bearing. I wouldn't imagine that it would backflow trash, but I've seen stupider stuff before. So if you notice, I've got all the caps off. I've got my breaker bar so I can pick the back end of the crank up and roll that bearing out. I'm gonna roll these bearings in, and these are X bearings, so we'll get some more clearance. Yeah, 1X, yeah. So we'll get some extra clearance, and in the event that something's whopper job with the crank, then we'll give it a little bit more room. I just need this thing to hang on for a cam swap, a dry sump oil pump swap, and a ported head swap. So we'll see. All right, so what I'm slept on it. What I'm going to do is just roll in. Actually, I've already rolled in the uppers. A new set of Federal Mogul X bearings. And I feel like a hack because I haven't used plastic gauge in the better part of 20 years, but it was the only way that I knew to see where I was in relation to bearing clearance at this point, and we're sitting between 2.5 and 3 thousandths, it looks like. So I'm going to call that good. I'm also going to roll in new rod bearings. Might as well while we're here. All right, so here are the rod bearings, old rod bearings. Make sure that I did change all of them, but they were all about the same. You could tell which one's the uppers and which ones are the lowers. The uppers were showing just a little bit of copper. So I rolled in some Federal Mogul with extra clearance. So we are somewhere between 2.5 and 3 thousandths on the mains and 2.5 and 3 thousandths on the rods. That'll run just fine. We'll never know the difference, and probably will have more oil pressure than what we did before with the wallered out main bearings. So everything's torqued and ready to go. So all we have to do now is put the pan on, and that'll be here tomorrow. So you probably won't see it on video. I may post a picture of it when it's on, just so that you can see, but you don't need to see the oil pan going on. So got our Peterson filter adapter on here, got our oil pump block off plate, oil pump and pickup are gone, and the pump shaft, new bearings, and we're gonna call it good. So hope old JJ Jr. Thanks me for this. I'm trying to help it, so hopefully it'll show me some love and respect. But I don't know if that'll skew the dyno results. I'm thinking not. There wasn't enough bearing damage to warrant any friction or drag. It was just showing just a glitter of copper in the filter, so I knew something wasn't perfectly right, but we'll see what happens. All right, guys, hope you're having a good week. Stay tuned for more on Project JJ Jr. Thank you for supporting the channel. We just hit 9,000 subscribers, so we're onward and upward for 10,000, so we'll see what we can do. Talk to you soon.